There you go. So you were right, but you just got a bit of detail there. It's important, Andy. Important.
But of course, we've got in Johnson, we've got the first criminal in number 10. The
first convicted criminal. Or at least fined criminal. I don't know if there were others that just didn't get caught.
But of course, the Queen, who is, is an amazing example. Only a year ago, he forced her to sign the illegal prorogation of Parliament.
Yeah. Well, that was Rees-Mogg, wasn't it? That was the J-Dog who's all over my screens as well this morning. He's the one that went up to Balmoral to lie to the Queen. But hey-ho.
Well, he was his lapdog. I mean, his attack dog for Johnson and his people. So the Queen has been forced by this person to break the laws.
Kind of, yeah, that works. And I mean, yes? Go on, sorry.
And at that time, I kind of thought, well, I wonder how many Tory MPs have been sitting this weekend singing that, and what they think about it. That there they are singing the wonderful Queen and whatever. She is an absolute example for for everyone. She's behaved so well in her reign.
I think I sang this verse with particular gusto. I sang this verse. Confound their politics, frustrate their knavish tricks. On thee our hopes we fix. God save us all. Amen.
Yeah, that jingoistic verse. Luckily, or hopefully, we didn't sing that. That got dropped.
The bit about scattering our enemies but anyway, it's a great point. It's right in there. It ties in with Matthew Dancona's piece in the Tortoise website today, and that it would be a tragedy if the Queen's final Prime Minister was this law-breaking liar. But of course, speaking of laws, as Andy rather brilliantly reminds us, thy choicest gift, shall I sing it? No, that wouldn't be appropriate at all. Thy choicest gifts in store, on her be pleased to pour, long may she reign, may she defend our laws. May she defend our laws. The whole country sang that this weekend, in some cases several times, when the country is governed by a man who breaks them. Holly Harris is here with your headlines. It is 11:35, and I mean, it's just lovely, isn't it? It's like live politics. Doesn't happen very often. I don't know whether it will sustain us all the way through till 1 o'clock today, because the picture isn't changing that much. And of course, my colleagues Sheila Fogarty and Eddie Mair will want to be talking about this as well as that vote edges ever closer. It's one of those days where Theo puts in an even bigger shift than usual. But I will certainly stay with it for the time being. Would you fancy answering this question? I may need to free up a couple of phone lines for this one, but will it make any difference? I'm really interested in this because Brexit is now returning to the conversation. And I mean, listen, I guess if you know anything about me, then you'll know that I was desperate for a second referendum because I wasn't qualified to vote in the first one. I really wasn't. I mean, I did vote Remain, so I would have voted the same in the second one, but I voted Remain largely because of all the people queuing up on the other side of the street being so disreputable and disgusting. That breaking point poster, if I'd been wavering in any way, shape or form, then Farage sort of cosplaying Nazi propagandists by using images that could have been lifted straight from 1930s Germany would have been the moment where I thought, well, I don't really understand the issues, but I know I can't be on the same team as this man. Would have swung it for me. But then speaking to people that voted for it, it changed everything for us on this programme. We went from being a little bit of a media backwater who was starstruck to be invited to go and present Newsnight to actually thinking, no, I'm staying here. I'm going to walk away from Newsnight because this is where I get to do the really heavy stuff, the really important stuff. And speaking every day to people who'd voted for it and realising that they didn't have a clue. No offence to them. Absolute job done on them by various people, including some who've sat behind this microphone, but realising that the people who encouraged Brexit had no idea what it meant was, I hope, the single most dispiriting and remarkable experience of my professional career. I say I hope because I'm not giving up just yet, but I can't imagine there'd be anything worse than that. I mean, Johnson's a sort of symptom of that, people discovering what Johnson is really like. It's not going to involve anyone who's ever listened to this programme. You've known exactly what he's really like for the duration because I've explained it to you in painstaking detail. But listening to people, talking to people who voted for Brexit, expecting all manner of things that were never going to happen, or for reasons that don't stand up to the slightest scrutiny, or because they believed things that were simply and demonstrably untrue, was spectacular for me. I mean, truly changed the nature of my job. You know, completely changed the nature of my job, changed the nature of how I talk to you every day, changed the nature of everything. It never occurred to me that I could live in a country where a majority of the population could be gaslit, groomed, and misled into undertaking an act of such epic national self-harm. And one of the reasons why I don't talk about it as much as you might expect, I mean, I nod towards it a lot, but I mean actual phone-ins on it or long monologues on it, is because I really don't want to. There's no fun in it. It must be probably the acid test of whether it's going well or not, is the people who celebrated it are the ones that want us to all shut up about it now. I mean, show me somebody who's won a cup and then wants to stop talking about it. Show me anybody in history who's won a desirable prize, a covetable prize, and then they want everyone else to stop. So will you please stop talking about the fact that we've just won the European Cup? I mean, honestly, will you please shut up about the fact that we've just won the Premier League? Will you please? It just never happens, does it? If you win something, you never bloody shut up about it. But this lot have shut up faster than you can say David Frost didn't understand what he was negotiating. Or Boris Johnson did put a border in it. It's incredible when you think about it. My gloves are going to start coming off in the coming months on this, whatever happens with regard to Boris Johnson, because I think that the number of people who decency and politeness demanded that we treat with respect has now probably been exhausted. If you're still clinging to it now, you don't get the contempt for the con men, compassion for the con treatment, because you have chosen to get into bed with the con men. It's incredible to reflect upon it. And so how damaging, I mean, how deep does this go? You can't separate Johnson from Brexit. And I don't think you can separate the current iteration of the Conservative Party from Brexit, even if you can separate it from Johnson. So you replace him in Downing Street. Keir Starmer, once again on LBC this morning, saying we can't go back. He's not going to be campaigning on any form of rejoining the European Union in the next electoral cycle if he becomes Prime Minister, not in a million years. I'll tell you that for nothing. And I haven't got a Brexit prediction wrong yet. But what about the Conservatives? You replace the leader, are they still going to be in denial about why there is only 25% or one of the main reasons why? None of these Brexit problems are necessarily solely created by Brexit. But every problem we've got is going to be made worse by Brexit. And if you replace Boris Johnson and the next person continues to completely ignore the huge herd of elephants in the room of British politics, then will it actually make that much difference at all? They won't be as corrupt as Johnson on a personal level. They won't be as debauched politically, professionally, personally. That would be impossible unless they resurrect Caligula. But they're just as hidebound by Brexit, I would imagine, as he is. They can't begin to tell. They can't begin. Natalie Elphicke, delivering for the British people. Natalie Elphicke complaining last week about truck stops, about lorry queues outside Dover, while failing to mention Brexit. Do you know they've brought in a disaster relief charity? Of course you do. You all read my column in the Daily Mirror on Friday. But for anyone who missed it, inexplicably, they've brought in a disaster relief charity. Kent County Council have brought in a disaster relief charity that normally deals with the aftermaths of floods, earthquakes and tornadoes to look after lorry drivers stuck on the motorways outside Dover. So I don't know. Getting rid of Johnson, will it make any difference at all to anything? 0345 6060973. Matt's in Pontypridd. Matt, what would you like to say?
Borodar, James.
Hello, Borodar, Matt. Thank you.
I don't think it matters whether he stays or goes. I think the damage is so complete now that I think the best thing that happened for the Tories is if they got rid of him, they'd probably get a hung parliament the next general election. But if Labour end up getting, they'll probably end up with a hung parliament, I think. And as soon as the SNP get their foot in the door, they get a referendum. I think people are going to need the SNP to get power during the next election. I think he's pretty much...
And they can use that. I mean, that was the original Project Fear, wasn't it? That was, they weaponised the possibility of a Labour SNP union or alliance to really scare the horses in 2015, where under Ed Miliband. I don't know if that would work again this time, would it, really?
No, I don't think it would. I think everybody sees him for what he is.
It might work with a different leader, though. I mean, that's a question.
Well, but I think that he's done so much damage. Even if you get a different leader and they do a decent enough job, I don't think they'll have enough power to get a majority. I think the SNP are going to get it either way and get a referendum, and that's the end of the union.
It's going to be hard to refuse them. I don't know if it is the end of the union, actually, just for the record, but I mean, it certainly it makes it more likely than it would otherwise be. Certainly, in the absence of a referendum, then it's never going to happen at all. Can you talk us through a little bit? And I know I'm going to pronounce it wrongly, but you were talking about independence in the context of Scotland. Can you talk me through the significance of that song that they sung before the game yesterday?
What Scotland sang or Wales?
No, the Wales one, because I'm going to mispronounce it. Say that again. Is it Amma O'Heed?
Amma O'Heed, yes.
Yeah,
it's basically about the Welsh language and Welsh culture, how it was destroyed, and Amma O'Heed means despite everything and everyone, we're still here. And
that speaks to perhaps a slight increase in that kind of feeling in Wales.
Yeah, I mean, during the pandemic, it showed that, especially Mark Drakeford, I think, did a wonderful job. I wouldn't vote for him because we disagree on independence. He believes in the union.
Yes, he does.
I'm not so sure after 12 years of Tory rule, to be honest. But I think that showed that we're probably better off without them. We can certainly do much better than what they had to offer.
So I would have argued with you once, and as I said to Billy in Glasgow earlier, you don't get rid of a partnership when your partner can change. You change partners if you can, or you wait until partners change. You don't judge a partnership by the value of the current partner. But I find it increasingly hard to support. Although, like you, I'm a big admirer of Drakeford's. In fact, I'd add him to the list that I suggested to David of politicians he should find out a little bit more about. I know he was in Belsize Park, so we can't vote for Mark Drakeford in any sense, but still he's on full disclosure as well, and that was fascinating. We're due to talk to Wes Streeting this week if events allow, because obviously things are moving pretty fast. I'm looking forward to that. I haven't met him before, but he certainly seems to be somebody who has a bright future ahead of him. Matt, many thanks indeed. The time now is 11:45. 11:49 is the time. I got a couple of calls about Brexit after that little monologue there. Oh, it's like the good old days. I don't know if we'll be able to take them. So John in Dublin, Daniel in Belper, I'm not sure yet that the country is ready for us to return to that particular fray on a proper basis. And I'm still drawn to the looming vote of confidence in Boris Johnson, or indeed vote of no confidence. I think if your anti-corruption czar resigns, let's just pause for a minute, shall we? Oh, James in Portsmouth, Philip in Cambridge. I'll be with you imminently. Just give me a couple of minutes. So your advisor on parliamentary standards resigned after you ignored his report into whether or not the Home Secretary had bullied colleagues. She had. And then the replacement complains in fairly strong terms about how you're conducting yourself, but currently remains in post. That's Lord Guide. You appoint an anti-corruption czar, and he resigns because he thinks you're corrupt. He's essentially saying you've broken the ministerial code, therefore you should have resigned. And then you look at your television screens, and you've got people like Dominic Raab out there. Jacob Rees-Mogg's been all over there the other day. I mean, I'm not criticising colleagues on this station or on any other station, but I do sometimes wonder why people don't ask questions that aren't from central casting. They don't ask questions that don't present themselves obviously. How can a man see his advisor on standards resign and his own anti-corruption czar, who he appointed himself, resign on the grounds that the Prime Minister is behaving corruptly? How can you defend that? That's what I'd be asking them today. How can you defend that? Or what is it the anti-corruption czar has got wrong about the ministerial code? What is it that the Prime Minister's advisor on parliamentary standards didn't understand that you understand better, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Dominic Raab, and the rest of them? Yowza McWowza. And so far, a few of you pointing out, and as far as I can tell, this is true, no word from Priti Patel. You don't think she's got leadership ambitions, do you? Or possibly she's still dealing with that little story that I had to share with you earlier. Reports coming into the studio that Paddington Bear is going to be on that first flight to Rwanda. after coming to the country via illegal routes. Maybe she's busy with that. But has Priti Patel, can we double check that? Has Priti Patel issued any words of support for the Prime Minister yet? 11:52 is the time. Okay. James is in Portsmouth. James, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James.
Hello, mate.
Well, to be honest, I'm a conservative voter and a member.
Okay.
And to be honest, I've been so outraged and disappointed with the way the party has been going since Boris Johnson took up tenure. So, and I've rang in to many of your colleagues to loudly, desperately hope for this to happen.
Okay.
So yeah, but I'm the way I see it is following Brexit, regardless of people's opinions on it, the Conservative Party, in some way, perhaps a bit like how Labour was under Jeremy Corbyn,
yes,
in a sense, was taken over by a populist kind of movement led by Boris Johnson. Because I've come to not see him as a Conservative; I just see him as a populist. And now we've come to...
He's a bit of a cult as well, isn't he, I think, among some...
Yeah, it's that same kind of populist cult of personality, which I honestly thought the Conservatives were largely immune from.
I thought Labour were as well, so we can both learn our lessons from that.
Take nothing for granted these days.
No, you're damn right.
And now we've come to the end of what all populists do when they get into power on the wave of usually one major issue. In our case, it was Brexit. Take Italy, for example, when Salvini was now in government again, but when he was in coalition the first time, it was large immigration, I believe. And now what they then do is, because they often don't have either very good ministerial experience or are just blatantly corrupt or are just idiots, they usually mess it all up.
Yeah.
And it leads to the imminent collapse of whatever they're leading or their own leadership. So I think, and I'm praying, although I'm with you, I think he will stay. But I'm just praying for the sake of my party that MPs do the right thing, remove this populist scourge once and for all, and then we can return to normal politics.
Are you confident of that? I mean, I don't know whether you are. I mean, you've said leaving Brexit aside, but I'm not sure we can in answer to the next question. Do you think that a change of leadership can effect a meaningful change of party? And you may not agree with me about this, but it's going to be harder and harder to argue with each passing month, while the claim that achieving Brexit is any form of achievement becomes increasingly nonsensical. No Conservative leader can really tell the truth about shortages in pretty much every sector, about excess economic damage on top of the broader picture, about inflation being higher than the rest of the G7. I just don't think any leader can tell the truth about that.
I would probably say that there will probably, because again you have to take the politics into it, of course. That most Conservatives are either pro or fairly neutral to Brexit.
You had Daniel Hannan this weekend saying we should have stayed in the single market. Bless him.
Oh God. Anyway, I'm just going to move on from that.
Yeah,
I do think a change of leader will at least help.
As a Democrat, I hope so. Actually, I don't mean, it's a bit like you mentioned the last Labour leader. It's a bit like the Conservatives who said, in the interests of parliamentary democracy, in the interest of having David Cameron held to account, and then later Boris Johnson, we would like to see a different Labour leader in place, even though it will make our jobs harder, because at the moment it's like having open goals on the other side of the House of Commons, and I hope the Conservatives do manage to rediscover some of the values that drew you to the party in the first place, or that drew people like Rory Stewart and Anna Soubry to the party in the first place. I may not agree with them about everything by any stretch of the imagination, but at least we can agree that grass is green and balls are round under the current law. Even that would be up for dispute, I think, with many of the Cabinet members. Thank you, James. I just want to move on so that Philip in Cambridge can be heard. Philip, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello, James. Good discussion. I'm the guy a few months ago who told you that I had a tiny bit of me that wanted to hug Boris Johnson. I don't know whether you remember. I wanted to console him because I felt sorry for him under pressure. All of that has gone. I'm so pleased to say.
So you've excised your last sort of scintillas of sympathy for the man.
I'm desperate for him to go. And actually, I think from a Tory perspective, which I'm certainly not, I think Jeremy Hunt would actually win in the next election.
You think he'd beat Keir Starmer of the NHS, mate? He didn't exactly cover himself in glory.
I know you called him average this morning or something like that, Jeremy Hunt, but I just think people soon forget, and I think they'd see him as decent, competent. I think Cameron called him his most collegiate member of his team. I think he'd be like John Major after Thatcher, and I think he could actually slowly turn things round.
That's a really interesting point, because we yearn for dullness, don't we, in a way?
Yeah, I think we go back to normal politics after 6 years, and I think it would. What fascinates me is all those who supported Johnson. What would they start saying after he went? Will they all start to turn and say, "Oh yes"? Well, of course, I always wondered whether he was really quite the ticket. But I just think, trouble is, I imagine that Hunt would not actually beat Truss with the membership if it was down to the two people.
I think it's going to be a bigger field than that. I think Ben Wallace is a man to watch, although he has come out in support of the Prime Minister. And then you've got the people who perhaps we don't know, whose names don't come trippingly off our tongues, who might step up. David Cameron wasn't very well known when he became leader. That was supposed to be an anointment of David Davis at conference that year, but he carked his speech. And Cameron came out of nowhere, so you never know. But I don't think there is a particularly deep pool of talent and integrity that has so far gone untapped by the general public. So yeah, you're going to be looking at Truss, you're going to be looking at Hunt. Wallace will have a go. Tugendhat will throw his hat into the ring, and the fact that Priti Patel is not coming out in support of her.
Do you know what, James? I sat there the other week in that parliamentary debate, watching it, the debate about whether to refer him for lying.
Yes.
And after 2 or 3 hours, I slapped myself around the face and said to myself, am I really watching a debate about whether the UK Prime Minister should be examined to find out if he's lied to... I just can't believe where this man has taken us.
That's what I mean when I talk about having your face up against the screen so closely you can just see pixels dancing around. You can't see the big picture. It's mad, isn't it, when you remember what we're actually talking about? He broke the ministerial code, almost certainly. His own anti-corruption czar thinks he did. But he's still clinging on to the job, and probably will cling on still. I think another interesting thing worth noting, thank you, Philip, is that even if he loses by 1 vote, he'll hang on, I think, because he can't contemplate not. We'll see. Well, probably we won't. Imagine if it was 52-48. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? And somehow almost poetic. Most PMs rather, if it goes badly, even if they win, would go. I don't think Johnson would. I think his whole shtick, as I've explained to you 764,909 times, is just to sit still. He's not lucky. He's not good. He's not talented at winning elections. He's just stubborn. He will not move until the story goes away. 4 minutes after 12 is the time. Who do you think just sent this to Jeremy Hunt? Your pandemic preparation during 6 years as Health Secretary was found wanting and inadequate. Your duplicity right now in destabilising the party and country to serve your own personal ambition more so. I've got Theo Usherwood on the line, and I don't think he would have seen that yet. Any guesses, Theo?
No, but I'd hazard a guess, if I could whittle it down, it would be a Conservative MP.
Yeah, higher.
Conservative Cabinet Minister.
Yep.
Oh, now. Nadine Dorries.
Who? Anyway, what have you been...
Right?
Yeah, you did, mate. Well played. Oh, look at that. That's why we pay you the city money. What's going on down on College Green, Theo Usherwood?
So I've roved from the Red Lion pub outside Downing Street down to College Green, where a number of Conservative front benchers will be put out to defend the Prime Minister and to make the point that if he was to be ousted in this coup this evening, then things like Brexit would be under threat. First out of the traps to my LBC microphone was the Brexit Opportunities Minister, Jacob Rees-Mogg. What is right about what the Prime Minister has been doing, and have Tory MPs who have been thinking about this coup, have they got it wrong?
Yes, they've got it wrong. Yeah. The Prime Minister is delivering Brexit, and it will be endangered if we were to change leader now. He has shown global leadership in bringing the West together over Ukraine, And through the policy decisions he made over COVID, an unknowable and difficult challenge, our economy opened up faster than other comparable economies, particularly the vaccine rollout. He has shown himself to be a good, strong leader who gets the big decisions right, and he has a mandate from the British people. I think it would be arrogant of Conservative MPs.
Like Tobias Elwood. Tobias Elwood, who said he thinks we should rejoin the single market.
Well, Tobias seems to want to overturn the referendum of 2016 as well as get rid of the Prime Minister. And I think that's really important because he gave the game away. That's what he and his friends...
Remain a coup.
Well, let's not talk about words like coup. But he and his Remainer friends never liked the result of the referendum. They thought the British people were wrong. They thought the British people were further wrong to give the Prime Minister a mandate of 80. I happen to think the British people were right. And we should support Boris Johnson with the mandate that he has got.
Do you think the Prime Minister needs to do anything else just to show more contrition, to show that he understands, that he gets the anger from Conservative MPs? Do you think he can make it better that way?
I think the Prime Minister fully understands these issues. But no, I think what the Prime Minister is best at doing is leading the country. And
delivering?
And delivering, absolutely right. And we've got to deliver more on Brexit, which I think is genuinely under threat from this.
That's Brexit genuinely under threat, of course.
How does that work? No, I mean, even Keir Starmer is saying it's not. So what's Nanny been giving Jacob Rees-Mogg with his shreddies this morning?
So Jacob Rees-Mogg is particularly worried, and as he said, Tobias Elwood gave the game away, that what could happen if the Prime Minister is ousted is that that wing of the party, the Remain wing of the party, the former supporters of David Cameron could put forward their candidate to leave the Conservative Party, who in the face of the cost of living crisis, the energy price crisis that we are seeing at the moment, could try and stage an intervention to alleviate those financial pressures that many families, millions of families are facing, by immediately rejoining the single market to try and bring down inflation, because of course if we were in the single market, then it would be easier to trade with the European Union, and therefore the cost of trading with the European Union wouldn't be so much, and then inflation would come down.
So when Jacob Rees-Mogg says things like that, is he somehow unaware that Brexit hardman Steve Baker and Andrew Brainache Bridgen are both voting against the Prime Minister tonight, or is he just hoping that people like you won't mention it?
He's appealing to people like Steve Baker and Andrew Bridgen to change their minds, because he's saying to them, look, I know you might not like the Prime Minister. I know you might have submitted a letter of no confidence or told him on the floor of the House of Commons that the gig is up, as Steve Baker did. But hang on a second, if you get rid of Boris Johnson, everything that you worked for, everything that you campaigned for is under threat, because you could end up with somebody like Tobias Elwood or Jeremy Hunt leading the party, and you wouldn't want that, would you?
Yes, and have you got any more? Have you spoken to anyone else, or is that
I did speak to Lord. Do you remember Lord Moylan, who said it was part of a press campaign?
No, I don't want him on my show.
No, you don't want that.
Sorry, no, absolutely not. That's absolutely polluted public discourse, quite enough. I'm just going to run people through those things that Jacob Rees-Mogg's very keen to defend, because very helpfully, of course, they put together the 9 most interesting potential Brexit benefits, didn't they, after asking Daily Express readers 6 years after the vote to come up with things that perhaps they could do as a consequence of Brexit. So I'll do that while you go and chase down some more politicians, yeah?
Okay, cool.
All right, stay safe. I don't want you getting lamped or anything. Just keep it friendly.
Okay.
Theo Usherwood live from College Green there. Those 9 top ideas from Jacob Rees-Mogg's department. So remember, this is Jacob Rees-Mogg very concerned that Brexit might be reversed, because that would stop us from achieving the following. Encourage fracking. Shortcut rules on planning consultation via Emergency Act. Abolish the EU regulations that restrict vacuum cleaner power to 1400 watts. I stress again, this is the best they could come up with after 6 years. Remove precautionary principle restrictions, for instance, on early use of experimental treatments for seriously ill patients and GM crops. Abolish rules around the size of vans that need an operator's licence. Abolish EU limits on electrical power levels of electrically assisted pedal cycles. Allow certain medical professionals, such as pharmacists and paramedics, to qualify in 3 years. Remove requirements for agency workers to have all the attributes of a permanent employee. Simplify the calculation of holiday pay to make it easier for businesses to operate. And reduce requirements for businesses to conduct fixed wire testing and portable appliance testing. So we ran through this on Wednesday with people who understand what all 9 of these things really mean. And they broke down either into things that involve a removal of our rights and protections, a compromising of health and safety, or things that we could have done while we were still in the European Union anyway. But still it lands, I guess. 10 minutes after 12 is the time. Got some phone lines open. I'm staying with this all the way through. It's a big day. They don't sound very enthusiastic. Should we listen to Rees-Mogg again just to give ourselves... what I wanted to do. Can we get Theo back? Because I'm going to have a go. I've got the hymn sheet. Not yet. Give him a chance to get hold of some MPs. I've got the hymn sheet. I'm going to have a go at being a Conservative MP and see if I can do a better job than Natalie Elphicke and Jacob Rees-Mogg. I'd struggle to do a worse job, but this is literally what British democracy has been reduced to.
What is right about what the Prime Minister has been doing, and have Tory MPs who have been thinking about this coup, have they got it wrong?
Yes, they've got it wrong. Yeah. The Prime Minister is delivering Brexit, and it will be endangered if we were to change leader now.
Clinton's already got it done.
Global leadership in bringing the West together.
That's simply
Ukraine.
not true.
And through the policy decisions he made over COVID,
he missed 5 Cobra meetings and sent untested patients back into care homes.
Faster than other comparable economies,
not true.
The vaccine rollout. He has shown himself to be...
The husband of the woman who presided over the vaccine rollout has just resigned as Boris Johnson's anti-corruption czar.
British people. I think it would be...
Theresa May had a mandate from the British people when Rees-Mogg voted to remove her.
Tobias Ellwood, who said he thinks we should rejoin the single market.
Well, Tobias seems to want to overturn the referendum of 2016 as well as get rid of the Prime Minister. And I think that's really important because he gave the game away. That's what he and his
Remainer coup.
Well, let's not talk about words like coup. But he and his Remainer friends never liked the result of the referendum.
Because they understood what it meant and you didn't.
They thought the British people were further wrong to give the Prime Minister a mandate.
No, they've been horribly misled by charlatans like you.
We're right. And we should support Boris Johnson with the mandate that he has got.
Do you think the Prime Minister needs to do anything else just to show more contrition, to show that he understands that he gets the anger from Conservative MPs? Do you think he can make it better that way?
I think the Prime Minister fully understands these issues. But no, I think what the Prime Minister is best at doing is leading the country.
Leading the country.
Delivering?
And delivering.
For the British
Absolutely
people.
Right. And we've got to deliver more on Brexit.
I missed the bit there. He trolled him, didn't he? Theo, you cheeky little tinker. Go for the delivering. He should have gone for the British people. For the British people, absolutely right. 12:12 is the time. Tony's in Taunton. Tony, what would you like to say?
Good afternoon, James.
Hello,
I think that Johnson should go, for definite. He's bringing politics and politicians in the disrepute, and for that reason alone, he should no longer be there, because we've got to try and build up a level of trust again. It's going to take time, unfortunately.
I think it is, yes. But what about all the people who don't want to or don't think that trust has been broken, or, to go back to a caller from a few years ago on this programme, who really like being lied to because it upsets people like me?
Yeah. I've heard a few like that as well. They will never change their view. They've been lied to so often. They're quite happy continuing being lied to, I think. And it's as long as the lie is comforting, they won't want to hear the truth. They would far rather hear that comforting lie than the unvarnished and unappetizing truth.
I think you're probably right. And what about that? Anyway. I mean, restoration of trust. Yeah, and I am going to bring the B word into things, and I've got a horrible feeling it's going to be rising up the conversational agenda in the coming months, not least because Daniel Hannan, of all people, has conceded we should never have left a single market. Can a Conservative leader, could a new Conservative leader, and again, for anyone just tuning in, I don't think we're going to get one tonight, but could a new Conservative leader restore reality, never mind trust, objective reality that people like Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nadine Dorries continue to deny? Could that be done while still...
It can't be done at the moment, I'm afraid.
No, I don't think it can.
The problem is that he's got too many of his own sycophants there around him. And I'm convinced that tonight we'll maybe see 100, 120. I don't think it'll be very much more than that. And that then will empower him to carry on doing what he's doing. Now, a lot of people are then going to say, oh, that's all right, because he's a disaster waiting to happen. And come the next election, he's going to be out and the Conservatives are going to lose half their seats.
Well, they should be making that calculation as well. And everyone I know is going for a similar number, actually, towards the lower half of that 100 to 130 to breakdown. I've changed slightly. I'm not making a prediction on this one, but partly because I want to retain my 100% prediction record. But on this one, I just don't know. But if I were doing numbers, they'd be higher now than they were at 10 o'clock this morning, because partly because of John Penrose breaking cover, and also recognising the significance of Jesse Norman's intervention. These are people who I think have some heft, and then also just that astonishingly vicious And it's probably very indiscreet of Nadine Dorries to attack Jeremy Hunt in the way that she just has. And if it was anybody else in the cabinet, I'd suggest that means that they're rattled. But when it's Nadine Dorries behaving in a way that appears to be both unprofessional and unparliamentary, I don't know that it is evidence of anything actually more significant than that, because, speaking very much from personal experience, when she attacks people, it rarely has anything to do with reality. It's like a sort of vicious reflex reaction. And there she is attacking Jeremy Hunt, who came second in the Conservative leadership election. So if it was anybody else in the cabinet, I would genuinely think that means they're a bit worried. But because it's her, I just think that's characteristic of her approach to people, rather than evidence of deeper concerns about the direction that the traffic might be going on this confidence vote. 16 after 12 is the time. 12:17 is the time. I've now got the letter that Boris Johnson has sent to all Conservative MPs, which I will share with you, possibly in its entirety. My eyesight's beginning to go, so it's all not go, but it's not quite as good as it was. So I might actually get that printed out on paper before reading it to you. See what you make of it. The question really is, whatever you want, frankly. There's going to be a vote of no confidence tonight in a Prime Minister whose own anti-corruption czar has resigned because he thinks he's corrupt, but he'll probably win because this is Boris Johnson's Brexit Britain. He's already seen one parliamentary advisor on parliamentary standards walk the plank because Boris Johnson ignored a report finding that the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, was a bully. That's the same Home Secretary who got binned from the last Conservative government for having secret meetings with a foreign power. We haven't even mentioned some of them yet. Jacob Rees-Mogg, king of the more powerful vacuum cleaners, claiming that we've got to keep Boris Johnson in place because otherwise Brexit might be damaged. He's the Minister for Brexit Opportunities, and 6 years after the Brexit vote has not come up with a single one. Claims about the vaccine rollout being better than it is in other countries are demonstrably untrue. That's not an opinion, that's just counting. And the husband of the woman who presided over the vaccine rollout, the venture capitalist to whom Boris Johnson gave a blank chequebook, of our money, of course, he's also resigned. He has resigned as an anti-corruption czar and offered up his letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister. So while the husband of the woman what did it is actually walking away from Boris Johnson, his supporters are claiming that actually he did it, and that's a reason to keep him in Downing Street. You could not make it up. Give me a ring and talk about whatever you want. In the broad context of this no confidence vote, you don't need to be answering my questions. I'm a very unprescriptive radio presenter. Give me a ring and say something interesting that no one said already, including me. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Victoria's in Stansted. Victoria, what would you like to say?
Oh, good morning, James. I'm not having a good morning.
I'm sorry. Can I help? Can I help at all?
You've already called it. If he gets voted down, in the short term it would be better for the country. In the mid-term it would... Well, if Keir Starmer leads us, we are better off. If he stays, it's more likely that Keir Starmer will take the helm. So I'm so furious at what I've just heard Jacob Rees-Mogg say that I'm shaking.
Well, you should. I don't want to sound unsympathetic, but you should be used to it by now.
He makes my ears bleed, and he has for months. And even more so than Nadine Dorries, it's Jacob Rees-Mogg today who's lashing out because he is nothing without Boris Johnson, who gives him these made-up jobs and protects ERG.
Excusez-moi, mademoiselle. He is the Minister for Brexit Opportunities. That is not a made-up job.
When I heard that, was it Gavin Williamson who was given a knighthood?
But Gavin Williamson has also stood up to Russian aggression, just like Boris Johnson has, by telling them to go away and shut up.
How utterly stupid do they think we are?
Oh, extremely. I can answer that one. Incredibly, extremely and completely stupid.
I have never moaned once. I was radically pro-remaining in the European Union for 1,000 reasons. I've never been so sure of anything in my life. When we left, I haven't moaned once, but everything is coming home to roost. Exactly. I this morning have paid £16 for a bag of pony nuts, and to all my farmer friends who said it would rid them of all the paperwork they didn't have to do, to now be moaning that you can't get the staff who have propped up your farming endeavours.
And you can't export your goods without difficulties. Well, how much would a bag of I mean, you've led me into territory where I'm not actually confident of the ground beneath my feet, Victoria. How much would a bag of pony nuts have set you back 5 years ago?
Well, 5 years ago, £10.
Okay.
Maybe £9. Every time I go in the shop, they've gone up another 50p. That's because they can't get hold of them.
Because they come from overseas, do they?
Or the animal fodder. No, in this country, but then they would be reliant upon Ukraine, which isn't directly our problem. But in terms of agriculture, fodders, agri-bits, anything.
You show me a problem, and I'll show you how Brexit's making it worse. The phone line's just wobbling a little bit. I don't want you to go away angrier than you were when you arrived, though, Victoria. So, is there anything I can do to soothe your conniptions?
Yes.
What?
Yes. If Boris Johnson loses this and he's voted down, will he take Jacob Rees-Mogg with him?
Oh, yes, for certain. Yes. That's why. I mean, look at them. Why do you think Nadine Dorries is going after Jeremy Hunt now like a rat up a drain pipe? They know. They know what their career prospects are under a sentient replacement for Boris Johnson.
Why do they think they're subtle, cunning, and clever? We can all see exactly what they're doing.
You know the answer to that. They don't. Usually they stand up and say that people think these people like Tobias think that the British people got Brexit wrong. It's projection, Victoria. You don't need me to explain this to you. Jacob Rees-Mogg thinks everybody is completely stupid, and you know that because he thinks he's clever. That's how upside down he is. So, of course, they think they can get away with this. How can they possibly get away with this, you ask? Because they got away with Brexit and they put Boris Johnson in Downing Street. Ergo, they can get away with anything. That's, I think, the simple logic of the situation. But I wish you well, particularly with the pony nuts. Would you like to hear Amrit in Nottingham? I will give you time to talk, but would you like to hear the entirety of Boris Johnson's letter to colleagues? I don't think Amrit realised I was addressing him then. Amrit?
Hiya. Hi, James. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
I'm all right. Not too bad.
Before you talk, shall I read everyone this letter?
Go on, then. Go for it.
Okay. We got any rousing music to play in the background, Keith? Something like, I don't know, It Wasn't Me by Shaggy. That would probably work, wouldn't it? Getting jiggy on the bathroom floor? No? Okay, sorry. No one wants to see that. Dear colleague, tonight we have the chance to end weeks of media speculation and take this country forward immediately as one united party. Tonight is the moment to draw a line under the issues our opponents want us to talk about and to focus instead on what really matters, the needs of the voters who sent us to Westminster. I am asking for your support tonight because I know how much we can achieve together. Together, we won the biggest mandate for the Conservative Party in 40 years. As we promised, we resolved the long Brexit crisis. Don't do commentary, just read the letter. As we promised, we resolved the long Brexit crisis and created a new and friendly relationship with... I can't do it. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to do some comment. What? David Frost was in a Belfast newspaper this weekend explaining why the Northern Ireland Protocol wasn't working because the European Union actually implemented what had been negotiated and he never expected them to do that. Meanwhile, the threat to break international law and abandon the obligations of a treaty that Boris Johnson signed does not, to me, speak of a new and friendly relationship with the European Union. But what do I know? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When the UK was hit by the worst global pandemic for a century, we showed the drive and grip to deliver the first approved vaccine anywhere in the world, followed by the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe. I'm going to have to do it again now, aren't I? So these countries are currently more vaccinated than we are. A higher share of people in these countries with a complete initial protocol. United Arab Emirates, Portugal, Cuba, Chile, Singapore, China, Canada, Vietnam, Brazil, Italy, Japan, Thailand, France and Germany. You've heard of Germany, right? It was their car industry that was going to come in and make sure that we still had access to the single market after voting for the Brexit that Boris Johnson's also boasting about in this letter. And, of course, the venture capitalist to whom he gave a blank chequebook in order to buy those vaccines, her husband has today resigned as Boris Johnson's anti-corruption czar on the perfectly reasonable grounds that he thinks Boris Johnson is actually corrupt. It was because we took tough but responsible decisions during the pandemic. Pause. He missed the first 5 Cobra meetings. Unpause. That we were able to reopen our economy speedily, with the result that we now have the lowest unemployment since 1974. Pause. For the first time in recorded history, there are now more people more vacancies in our job market than there are unemployed people. That is an economic disaster whichever way you cut it, except, of course, this way. And we took the decision to become the first European country to help the Ukrainians to protect themselves against Russian aggression. And I am proud of the leadership the UK has shown. A man described by the Canadian government as being a member of Vladimir Putin's inner circle has been sanctioned. That man celebrated his 60th birthday on the day after the last general election result, and Boris Johnson went there with his wife. That man's son sits in the House of Lords, despite advice from the security services that he shouldn't. Boris Johnson has refused a request by the House of Commons to publish that advice. That's how he protects us all against Russian aggression. From tackling social care to striking an economic and migration partnership with Rwanda. We have shown time and time again that we can be trusted to deliver bold and innovative solutions to difficult and long-standing problems. The Rwanda scheme, as I have explained to you on several occasions, is designed to allow them to paint targets upon the back of lawyers. If there's any problem with the attempt to deport genuine asylum seekers to Rwanda, it will be because it's illegal, not because asylum seekers have achieved legal representation. I say all this not because I want to take satisfaction in past achievements, well, that would be a struggle, mate, but because now is the time to concentrate every ounce of that same energy and drive on the priorities of the British people. You'll remember that the U-turn on the windfall tax was undertaken only after months of Labour campaigning, that they've taken £20 a week out of the pockets of the poorest people in this country as we came out of the lockdown, and that the cost of living crisis is something that the government almost refused to acknowledge, never mind address, for months and months and months. As the whole world struggles with the economic impact of Putin's aggression, we have already taken decisive action, just as we took decisive action during COVID, to shield the public from the energy price spike. We are helping 8 million of the most vulnerable households with £1,200 of support, amid many other measures. We can do this because we have the fiscal firepower to help, because of the tough and contested decisions we took during COVID. He won't be giving you any examples of those. We are finding the cash because we are compassionate Conservatives and because it is the right thing to do. But we also know that you cannot just spend your way out of inflation that he was denying as long ago as November of last year. And you cannot tax your way into growth. They have introduced more tax rises than I think any government in living memory. Over the next few weeks, Rishi and I will be setting out all the ways in which we will be using Conservative principles to take advantage of our new freedoms. That, of course, is the first Chancellor of the Exchequer and the first Prime Minister ever to have been found to have committed crimes while in office. To take advantage of our new freedoms. What new freedoms? List them. Can't. Cut costs and drive growth. Cut costs. We've introduced economic sanctions on our own country, but he is somehow going to find ways to cut costs and drive growth. I can't read anymore. I'm sorry. I'll come to Amrit. Should I finish it? Am I being unprofessional? This is taking a psychic toll on me. We will, of course, devote all our energy to reducing the biggest single household outgoing of all, the tax bill. It must come down, and it will, because that is the best way to deliver the growth we need. Can't do it. Here's Holly Harris with the headlines. The bad news is I decided to read Boris Johnson's letter before speaking to Amrit in Nottingham. The good news is it was so awful I couldn't get to the end of it, so Amrit gets on early. Amrit, what would you like? What made you pick up the phone today?
Hi, James. James, two things, really. One is that I think Boris will win the vote of no confidence, but I'd like him to get about 186 of his MPs voting for him out of his 359, because 186 roughly equates to about 52%.
Well done, yes. Well, you've done the maths.
So it's a bit of poetic justice.
What would that? Yeah. So I mean, I think it's going to. I don't think it's going to be that close. Although some of the movement today suggests it might be. It might not go as well as the bookies think. The bookies have got it, but the bookies are just looking for a binary result, aren't they? So that doesn't really matter.
But it feels like support is beginning to crumble because, like as you said earlier today, the anti-corruption czar has resigned. Jeremy Hunt has come out saying vote against kind of Boris Johnson. I think they're getting nervous. I mean, I think he will win, but I think the other part of their calculation needs to be what will be the impact for the coming June by-elections. Because the newspapers are reporting the Tories
they've given up on Harrogate. It's reported today. There was Labour were 20 points ahead in Harrogate. I think a swing, the likes of which you don't see very often.
Yeah. So if they don't get rid of him today, then I think the swing may solidify or get worse come the June election.
They can. There's a little bit. I should check this with Theo before I say it out loud, but you know me. I think that they can go to the 22. So the thing is, if he survives today and then they get absolutely rinsed in the by-elections coming up, they might that rule that they can't have another vote of no confidence for a year.
Yeah.
I think that is negotiable. I think the 22 can change that.
They can change it. No, I've read that as well. I think they could alter that. And I think the other thing they need to bring into this is the fact that Boris got booed during the Jubilee celebrations. I think the booing is actually a chunk of... I mean, this wasn't a political rally which he was attending. It was a Queen's celebration of her Jubilee. He gets booed, and I think that's basically saying that the people have seen that the Emperor's got no clothes.
Well, I've been saying that, as you will know, for the best part of a decade. So it'd be nice for everybody in the crowd to agree, but I'm afraid the front row of the crowd, the relevant part of the crowd, are the Conservative MPs who possibly know that he's naked. But as with Republicans in America have done recently, prioritise their own electoral survival over the nakedness, the nudity of the president or the prime minister. The question then says... or the point then becomes whether or not they're right. That will probably be the calculation that a lot of them are making. But are they right that Boris Johnson represents their best chance of retaining their seats as and when there is another general election? Increasingly, I think that would be quite a hard position to defend. Just a quick word from Andrew in Herne Hill, who says, "Dear James, you're delivering for the British people. Brilliant radio, thank you." Referring, I imagine, to the attempt to read out Boris Johnson's letter in full, which I'm afraid genuinely defeated me. Guy's in Wandsworth. Guy, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Good afternoon. Great show. Really enjoying it. Some excellent contributions. I share your kind of uncomfortable fence-sitting position that as a patriot he's got to go. I agree he's probably going to survive. And the mental gymnastics, being undertaken by Tory MPs this morning is just something to behold, isn't it?
It really is.
Remarkable.
Yes, Elphick was brilliant. I mean, say what you like about the man. He's delivering for the British people, delivering people.
I mean, she's rivaling Dorries, really, isn't she?
Takes some doing. Yes.
She's going up there. But I mean, the question that I'm struggling with, and the conundrum I've got, and I don't know quite know what outcome I want, is about the possibility of him surviving by a slim margin, as you've sort of predicted, and whether the collective opposition has a better chance in a immediate sort of snap general election, or whether if he were to lose, and the Tories would obviously inevitably attempt to rebrand themselves as new Tories, having cleaned out the dishonesty and corruption.
I think Brexit,
given the gullibility of the electorate that we've witnessed in the Brexit vote, that might just work. So I'm slightly.
But how can it? I'm fascinated by how someone can. I mean, they're not going to be as bad as Boris Johnson. They're not going to be having parties or expecting staff to clean up vomit or hiring extra servants at Chequers or. I mean, I'd be here all day if we were to go through the charge sheet. But they are still going to have to pretend that Brexit was a good idea.
They are indeed. And I suppose what particularly worries me is that I think, like many people who are pro-European, I had hoped that at some point Starmer and Davey would get their heads together and an electoral pact of some kind might emerge. And if Labour had a sort of healthy lead in the polls, then we might fall back into the situation of 2017, of 2019, where Labour effectively deluded themselves that they could win alone, that they didn't need to, to collaborate with other parties.
Yeah, I think you changed the face of British politics. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
So Labour running in Wimbledon, for example, at all, only served to enable a Tory sitting MP to stay in place by 400 votes.
Splitting it down the middle. I hear you, mate. I'm moving on only because there's so many people waiting to contribute, and also because I was told by someone quite close to the action that there is a genuine fear of what that might mean for the future of the Conservative Party. If that idea that if the Lib-Lab pact of old were to be resurrected, then it would close things down in a way that really puts the cat among the pigeons politically, because, of course, then a majority in Parliament could bring in a form of proportional representation which might consign the Conservatives to electoral oblivion for generations. But that is not my analysis. It's someone I respect and I share with you. Thank you, Guy. I've just remembered I've got a good woke watch for you today. We'll do that today at some point if I remember. And I've also got a rather good defence of Boris Johnson from a Conservative MP, which mentions me, and I might play that out to you shortly, and you can see if you can work out which Conservative MP it actually is. But first, James is in Glasgow. James, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Like your previous caller just after you played the Jacob Rees-Mogg clip, I was absolutely just enraged. But
I should have given a trigger warning, shouldn't I?
Oh, any time he comes on the radio, you have to give a trigger warning. Absolutely. My God.
Did you know? I've never noticed it before. But he is Trigger with a posh education, isn't he? He even looks a bit like him. He is Trigger with a public school education. I've never actually spotted.
Too cruel to Trigger.
No, that's not fair on Trigger. Trigger at least meant well, didn't he? So, go on. What made you pick up the phone?
Boris, in my opinion, he's got to go, but I don't think he will. I think he'll, like everything else, he'll slime out of this. He's nothing surprises me. And to give you an analogy that you can either take or improve, it's like when the chess piece is the king's in check, and he's able to move just that one square every time.
It's a really good point.
And
you're right.
This is it again.
Yeah, it's game over, but not. It's death by 1,000 cuts, isn't it?
It's game over, and unlike Mogg says, it's not just about cake, it's about the constant
that's disgusting.
lies.
That's why that was just an astonishing claim to make, that this was about cake. So Brexit hardman Steve Baker, Andrew Brainache, Bridgen, all of them are somehow concerned about the cake rather than the direction of traffic, or they're all part of a Remainer plot to replace Boris Johnson. The man's a menace, he really is.
Boris is Brexit, and I would love to see the second article that he wrote for.
You can. It's in the back of Tim Shipman's book, actually.
Is it?
It's in the back of Tim Shipman's second or first book. I mean, you should read Tim Shipman's books anyway because they're brilliant. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he had the text of the other column in the back of All Out War.
That seems to be forgotten.
No, I know. It's
and it's just the constant lies. It's just, we can't. Like, I agree. Long term, short term, him going might be beneficial. Him staying might be better for politics in terms of like going against the Conservatives, but
that balloon has deflated a bit for me during the course of today's show. Those sort of calculations about what might be best in the long term, and we want to fight an election here or we want to fight an election there. I do think that if anyone should really have been on his toes about just how appalling Johnson's influence upon politics in general in the country at large has been, it should have been us here, and saying that it would be much nicer to fight against him in the next year. It doesn't matter. Things have to be more important than that. And people like Saeed Abbasi, a former chairman or deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, making points like that, you have to prioritise. At some point, you have to prioritise country over party or personal ambition. James, thank you. I'm going to have to issue an apology. I hate doing this. But obviously a big theme of today's programme has been the importance of delivering to the British people. So I'm going to have to apologise to Paul in Coventry, who's got in touch to say, your show has been so good today, James, that I've just missed a delivery. So while Boris Johnson is delivering for the British people, Paul in Coventry, as a consequence of listening to this radio entertainment, is not delivering for the British people. And I tell you what, Paul, you're just lucky I'm not going to pass your number on to Natalie Elphicke, because she would have things to say. She would have things to say about your failure to deliver for the British people. Because say what you like about the MP for Dover, delivering for the British people is something she really believes that should be delivering for the British people, British people, delivering, British people, British delivering.
Well, I think that Boris Johnson has been delivering for the British people. I think he's been delivering for the Conservative Party, and I'm going to be voting for him, and I think he is going to win tonight.
And what do you think he's got above anybody who might succeed him in the top job?
Well, Boris Johnson has been delivering for the British people, and that happens through leadership and a great team. He's got great leadership, he's got a great team, and they've been delivering. If it's COVID, if it's cost of living, whatever the issue that has been thrown at him, he's been delivering for the British people, and I think he'll carry on doing that.
Do you think that it would be a mistake to replace Boris Johnson?
Boris Johnson is the right Prime Minister. He's been delivering for the British people. It's absolutely the right thing to have the vote, get behind him and move on to carry on delivering to the British people. That's what I'm hoping to see tonight.
Natalie Elphick there, delivering for the British people. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. A couple of phone lines free if you want to be quick. It's flown by, today's programme. When we do one topic, we do it very rarely. In fact, we haven't done it for a lot. Well, COVID, obviously. But in the context of politics, normal-ish politics, that's rare. But, it absolutely flown by. No doubt the final 15 minutes are going to drag like nobody's business. 12:47 is the time. Jill in South Woodford is dotting my I's for me. James, she says, your programme is brilliant, but please stop saying that Kate Bingham is married to John Penrose. It's Dido Harding who has the honour of being married to the former anti-corruption czar, a fact that I found hugely ironic given her handling of Test and Trace and the money she was paid in that role. Did I get that wrong? Because Jesse Norman was married to Kate Bingham. He's also resigned, but he wasn't the anti-corruption czar. He was a former Treasury Minister who stepped down a couple of years ago, was promised, he says, advancement later by Boris Johnson, and has now said, I could never serve under your government. So you may have misheard or I may have misspoke on that one. So either way, just to clarify, the anti-corruption czar was married to Dido Harding, who didn't cover herself in glory during the coronavirus crisis. Funny how none of these sycophants are mentioning the test and trace system, are they? The world-beating test and trace system, or indeed the decision to send patients untested back into care homes. And Jesse Norman is married to Kate Bingham, the venture capitalist that Boris Johnson gave a blank chequebook to secure all those vaccines. I'm not going to read you the list of countries that are actually more vaccinated than we are because, I've got something more fun to do. I'm going to play you two clips of Conservatives defending Boris Johnson. One of them is a satirist and one of them is real. And I'm going to ask you to decide. Clip number 1, please, Keith.
Hi. As you can see, I'm in my bed as I've been a bit run down lately, but that won't stop me being in Parliament later to pledge support for our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, let's not forget what he's been through, more than any other in peacetime. Despite all the odds against us in Parliament and the media and the Remainers and James O'Brien and the Irish, he delivered Brexit. And the pandemic, let's look at what he did there. Not the death toll, but the vaccine. And that's why today I will be pledging my support for Boris Johnson.
And the second clip, please, Keith.
Hi, as you can see, I'm on the train. I'm coming down from Wakefield to London to pledge my support today for our Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Now, Boris Johnson, let's not forget what he's had to deal with since he's been the Prime Minister. More challenges than any other in peacetime. Despite all the odds against us in Parliament and the Remainers and the media, he delivered Brexit. On top of that, look at the pandemic. We've delivered a global leading vaccination programme. And look at the Prime Minister today. Look how he's been leading the way in support for Ukraine. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has got my full support today.
OK, this is harder than we thought, actually. I can tell by some of the blank faces looking back at me in the production studio, and I think we need to do it again. So one of these is a satirist and one of them is a serving Conservative MP. Your challenge, should you choose to accept it, is to guess which one is which. Clip number 1, please, Keith.
Hi. As you can see, I'm in my bed as I've been a bit run down lately, but that won't stop me being in Parliament later to pledge support for our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, let's not forget what he's been through, more than any other in peacetime. Despite all the odds against us in Parliament and the media and the Remainers and James O'Brien and the Irish, he delivered Brexit. And the pandemic, let's look at what he did there. Not the death toll, but the vaccine. And that's why today I will be pledging my support for Boris Johnson.
And clip number 2, please, Keith.
Hi, as you can see, I'm on the train. I'm coming down from Wakefield to London to pledge my support today for our Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Now, Boris Johnson, let's not forget what he's had to deal with since he's been the Prime Minister. More challenges than any other in peacetime. Despite all the odds against us in Parliament and the Remainers and the media, he delivered Brexit. On top of that, look at the pandemic. We've delivered a global leading vaccination programme. And look at the Prime Minister today. Look how he's been leading the way in support for Ukraine. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has got my full support today.
It's 12:52. One of those was a satirist and one of them was a sitting Conservative MP. And Keith, do not let me finish the show without revealing which was which. Shall I do it now, actually? I don't think you need too much suspense. The one on the train was Andrea Jenkins MP. So thank you to everyone who sent me that clip. I was blocked by Andrea Jenkins on Twitter not long ago. So, well, long enough ago for me to have completely forgotten why, actually. I don't think she was the one that libelled me. That was another one who got obviously ticked off by so Saturday night I was on my holidays in Scotland. Anyway, she was the Go Trump woman. That was her on the train, and the satirist doing her support for Boris Johnson from her bed was Rosie Holt, who I encourage you to follow on Twitter, where she tweets as Rosie is a Holt, and she's brilliant. All of her clips are magnificent, even the ones that don't mention me. So there it was. Very, very hard to put a cigarette paper between the actual MP and the person taking the mickey out of an actual MP. Time now, though, I think, for Woke Watch.
Woke Watch.
Today's Daily Mail by someone called Christopher Hart. No, me neither. Is West End going broke because it's gone all woke? And he refers to the fact that Andrew Lloyd... Well, he begins almost as if he can't quite believe what he's agreed to write for the Daily Mail. He begins by pointing out that theatres across London and the provinces are in desperate straits. Many are half empty night after night, and some aren't even bothering to open the upper circles as so few tickets are selling. And then offers up a variety of reasons why the entire theatrical profession at the moment is facing massive problems. But then, because we need to get woke into the headline, he suggests that two plays, as far as I can tell, one by Andrew Lloyd Webber, Cinderella, and another one that shut some time ago, a kind of pastiche of Jane Austen, have closed because they are woke. So all the other plays are doing very badly because no one's buying tickets for the theatre, but the ones he doesn't like because Prince Charming's gay, that is apparently because it's too woke. It's too woke. So just off the top of my head, it's not really off the top of my head. 1965, Lionel Bart's Twang, the successor to Oliver. Obviously, that about Robin Hood, that was too woke. It even had Ronnie Corbett in it, would you believe? 1991, John Barrowman, one of the biggest stars in the country at the time, did a show called Matador, which also flopped. Cameron Mackintosh brought Moby Dick to the stage in 1992. Must have been too woke. There was a show called Imagine This, set in the Warsaw Ghetto of 1942, had an absolutely astonishing cast. That shut in 2007. The bloke who brought Wicked and Les Mis to the table, two blokes, failed to get the biblical musical Children of Eden off the ground, despite it premiering in 1990. I could go on. So the Daily Mail today finds a couple of plays, one of which is absolutely brilliant. I haven't seen Cinderella, but the Jane Austen show that was on at the Criterion was absolutely hilarious. But the reason why shows that feature rude words and gay characters have closed is because they're woke. But all the other shows in the entire country that aren't woke but are facing exactly the same problems with ticket sales, I can't even work it out anymore.
Woke Watch.
And remember, you can email wokewatch@lbc.co.uk to bring to my attention any other attempts to ludicrously insert the woke into a story that is designed to enrage you about things that you don't know what you're getting enraged about. I should squeeze in a call before home time. Mark's in Tamworth. Mark, can you remember why you rang in?
I can go just about, thank you.
Top man, I'll give you a minute. Go on.
Need to tell when this was. I want Boris to stay tonight. I'm by no means a Conservative voter or supporter.
Sure.
But I'm pretty convinced that if Boris stays, ultimately will be the end of the Conservative Party as we know it. I think it will facilitate a Labour winning a minority victory and, a coalition with the SNP and the Lib Dems as a result. And then I foresee, as a result of that, in order to stave off a breakup of the union, they'll have to bring in PR. That introduction of PR will then effectively keep the Conservatives out of power.
Why does that?
In my lifetime.
Why does that prevent the breakup of the union?
It'll give them real power, I think. That's a real contribution towards the running of the country, which, of course, they feel alienated, a lot of them at the moment, which I think drives, the nationalism up there.
Okay.
But then I think if faced with that, that long-term, prospect of being in limbo and unelectable, the Conservative Party then will turn in on itself, the different factions that we see now. And start
Nadine Dorries going after Jeremy Hunt in the last hour was something I didn't think I'd see in well, I can't say my lifetime, but I certainly wouldn't have expected to see it quite so soon after the no confidence vote was announced.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the factions that run deep.
It's a civil war in the waiting, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, and I think if once they're faced with the prospect of basically being unelectable under PR, that then the factions will just divide the party, and you'll
That's
get
a really interesting analysis. It tallies with what I met. Someone was telling me quite recently about fears among the right-wing media about what may be in the offing. It was a former SPAD, a former advisor to government, who's crossed over into political consulting and PR, talking about that being a genuine fear in some quarters. So you're in goodish company, but you gave a much more thorough analysis of it than he managed to. I suppose that was, I need to say to you, that was worth waiting for, Mark. I apologise for keeping you on hold for so long.
No problem. So it's a pleasure to listen.
Always. We'll talk again. And my apologies to Corey in Edinburgh, Michael in Maidenhead and others as well, who I won't have time to talk to because Sheila is here. And I need to close with this little text from Sally. She says, James, you could turn that into a new feature called Moron or Mickey Taker. Let's face it, there is a wealth of material. I think you might be onto something there. The Mickey Taker, for the record, in those clips that I played you earlier, was the actress and comedian Rosie Holt, who tweets as Rosie is a Holt. And the moron, to use Sally's phrase, although it's not one I would ever dream of applying to a serving Conservative MP who had hashtag MAGA in her profile until quite recently, is someone called Andrea Jenkins. Oh, what a time to be alive. Here's Sheila 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 to be alive.